Hello everybody and welcome. This is the 8th YouTube session of the 11th fall edition of our Read for Pixels campaign. My name is Anusha Kandasivam. I'm your moderator for this session. Through Read for Pixels, the Pixel Project is collaborating with 17 award-winning and best-selling authors to raise awareness about violence against women and to raise funds for the Pixel Project to keep our efforts to end violence against women alive and kicking. I'll be telling you more about the Read for Pixels fundraiser. We have lots and lots of exclusive author goodies a little later. But meanwhile, if you want to find out more about the Pixel Project, go to our website, www.thepixelproject.net. Right, so we have an amazing guest today, the fabulous fantasy author, Robert V.S. Redick. Hi, Robert.
Hey.
Thank you so much for being with us. Let me give everybody a short bio about you. Robert is the author of The Red Wolf Conspiracy, Master Assassins, Sidewinders, and other epic fantasies. His books have been shortlisted for the Locust Award, SFX Novel Award, and the AWP Thomas Dunn Award for Best Novel. Now, aside from joining today's stream, Robert has very generously donated some super exclusive goodies to the stash of author treats we have set up as perks for donors on our Read for Pixels Rally Up fundraising page. I'm going to tell you what they are right now. First, it's the Robert's Red Wolf Conspiracy audiobook. So this special treat from Robert, there it is, comprises one audiobook edition of the Red Wolf Conspiracy. This is in CD format and it's sealed.
Mm-hmm.
And there will be one accompanying signed and personalized note from Robert with that. This is for US donors. And the next one is one audiobook edition of Master Assassins, also CD format and sealed. Wow, so cool. Looks so cool. And an accompanying signed and personalized note from Robert. And the third thing is Robert's Master Assassins signed and personalized first edition hardcover. Oh,
yeah.
So amazing. Yeah. Signed and personalized first edition hardcover of Master Assassins. That's not easy to get your hands on. Okay, and number 4 is Robert V.S. Redick critiques your fantasy work in progress. This is for donors worldwide. For the budding fantasy authors among you, Robert has graciously donated an opportunity for one Read for Pixels donor to get professional feedback on their writing. Robert is a faculty member of the Stone Coast MFA program at the University of Maine, and he will be
former.
And he'll be happy to provide a written critique on 20 pages of a work in progress submitted by the donor.
Mm-hmm.
Right, so that's a really great opportunity. All of this amazing swag is up on our Rally Up page, and the link is up in our chat box right now, so go and click through and have a look and get your hands on all this amazing stuff. We've raised $3,335 towards our $5,000 goal so far. Thanks. But please do give generously before the fundraiser ends in October 2025. All funds go towards the Pixel Project's work to help end violence against women. Now, before we get on with the reading, you, the audience, will also be able to ask Robert questions. Just make sure you're logged into your YouTube account so that you can type your questions into the chat box on the right of the YouTube screen. And Jay, who is today's producer and chat box moderator, will relay the questions to us. All right, just before you're reading, Robert, I think we have a trigger warning.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you have that text already, or do you want me to describe what people might hear?
Yeah, if you could do that.
Oh, sure. Well, okay, so it's, this is a short reading. It's only about 10 minutes, but it, I guess, it isn't, it's more implicit than explicit, but we're in the mind of a child soldier who's been through a lot. And war is on the edges of everything that happens in this little chapter. And so it might be fairly triggering. She's also very, very foul-mouthed, if that matters to anyone, but she's a soldier. So
all right.
I don't think, as it turned out, some of the harder portions didn't make it into the excerpt that I'm reading tonight, but it never hurts to let people know.
Yeah.
I don't think this will be too extreme for anyone, honestly.
Okay. It's all right. So if you think you don't want to listen to Robert's reading right now, go and get a cup of coffee, come back in about 10 minutes, and we'll continue with the discussion. But for now, go ahead, Robert.
Okay, well, thanks everybody for being here. I'm really, really honored to be reading in support of the Pixels Project. I think their work is just fantastic. It's a great honor to be invited. And so I'm reading from just a few pages from the beginning of a novel called Siege, which is the last in my epic fantasy trilogy called the FIRE Sacraments. And it's very, very close to done. It's currently about 1,020 manuscript pages, which is insane. It's going to be a huge book even after I edit that down a little bit. But these pages are in the voice and from the point of view of a young woman named Talupeke. She is a child soldier, and she's been fighting. She's been in combat since she was 13. She's now 16 and a half. And we're in a continent, a dry and war-torn and not very prosperous continent called Urath, in an invented world. And Talupeke, with a lot of friends and comrades, etc., she has been trapped by summer heat in an oasis called the Font of Luprise, in the middle of a huge desert where we spent most of the previous novel, called Sidewinders, by the way. And to keep Talupeke busy, her grandmother has more or less blackmailed her into keeping a journal, writing a journal. That's the deal. The grandmother says, "You keep writing, I'll keep fighting to stay alive." And the grandmother is very ill. So this is an excerpt from her journal. And the other thing you need to know is that Talupeke, a few of her fellow soldiers, including that grandmother and her uncle, they were sent on this journey as part of a caravan across the desert to protect two brothers and their very special and secret letter that they have to deliver. Plot details, you don't need to know more than that. But they've made it this far, which is about 80% of the way across the desert, and then the heat comes down and they are trapped in this oasis. But the brothers, right before the heat gets impossible, slip away. They run away from the oasis where everyone else is trapped, and Talupeke is really, really pissed off. She also hates writing in her journal. She hates it, especially because everybody tries to tell her how to do it. Her kindly uncle says, "Write what you're thinking and feeling," which doesn't work at all. But then a friend says to her, "Why don't you imagine that you're writing to one friend who's far away? And maybe that will make it easier for you to do it." And she says, "Okay," but the person she chooses to be addressing in her journal is actually one of those brothers that she's really pissed at, and his name is Kandri. So that does help with motivation. It doesn't really help with the anger problem that she's dealing with. I think that's really all you need to know, except there's also a drug-using and penniless prince who's among her friends. He pops up in this, but that's about all you need to know. So this is Talupeke's entirely private journal. The Font of Luprise. I had a book with pictures of this place. The lemon groves and the fountains and the girls in red sarongs. Was it real? Who cared? I would never travel, never see lands this side of the desert, any more than I'd walk the twilight meadow on the mountain of the gods. But miracles happen. We stepped into that desert on one side of Urath and walked forever and then forever again, and there were storms and wasps and lumps of burning iron that fell from the clouds, and my comrades died, and the drivers died, and our camels died, and still no one even whispered halfway. And we walked on and fought those painted crazies called the slaughterhouse clowns. And my captain died so close his blood reached me on the wind. And we walked on another 2 or 3 eternities, and one day Mr. Ulrans pointing and shouting from a ridgetop, "Luprise, Luprise." He's a foul man with piggy eyes, our Ulran. He's sitting here across the table from me, sucking a mango pit and watching me write. Trying not to because he fears me. He's not entirely a fool. All I have to do is glance up to scare him off to his room, where I suppose he puts his hands in his trousers and moans and mispronounces my name, like my comrades in arms. No, Ulran's not all bad. He leads the caravan now since the night of the jellyfish massacre, and I will say he kept everyone walking despite our acid-burned bodies and our broken hearts. That day on the ridge, he made men wild with his talk. Luprise and its pleasures. wine and lamb shanks and aromatic oils and marble baths and willing whores. All that is true. Luprise is beautiful like the dream of the goddess of music, but it's still an island in a sea of sand. Today, a parrot flew by in the blazing sun, and I heard a bubbly hiss, and slay me if its droppings weren't there sizzling like bacon in the street. So much for living. I think I'll skip the feeling part because did you know there are 19 kinds of scorpions in this desert? I saw them dried and pinned on this fucker's wall. Never mind that. I was going to tell you about the bloodstains on this notebook. I can't decide if they're my fault. So there's this huge jackass, the Ursad so-and-so's bodyguard, who comes in here to the boarding house, comes in here for palm wine and goat's milk and watches us while he drinks. I had no problem with him whatsoever. I thought his muscles were impressive for a cheap-ass hired sword. Maybe he tells good jokes or stories, I thought. So today I nodded to him, just a soldier's hello. He gave me a funny smile. My comrades stopped chewing, looked from me, and jumped up quick with their plates and fled the table. All but Gran and Uncle, who had their backs to the big man and were arguing about the coming war. Up he slouches close to our table until he's right by Gran's elbow. I'm looking around with no idea in the world. Then, still staring at me, he drops the smile and does something crude and obvious with his tongue. My old captain would have called that an unfortunate decision, and so it was because my uncle and Gran chose that moment to notice him. Naturally, their eyes snap right back to me, and I just grin and start to loosen my shoulders. Steady, steady, Uncle warns as I stand up. But all the big fool sees is a girl who finds him hilarious and won't fuck him this century, so he curls his lips, sneering, and asks, "Which of them jilted you, huh?" Jilted? I say, because I'm lost again. Which of them brothers? I saw how the light left your sassy little eyes when they ran off. Which of them were you sweet on? Did he do much for you? Sir, calls our poor addict prince from another table, you are about to experience the most extraordinary discomfiture. Take some well-meant advice, and was it the short one, says the fool. Oh my, it was. Just look at her now. Fess up, girlie. Did he promise to love you forever if only he could taste before he buys? And then, what do you suppose? Once he's tasted good and proper, he ain't in the market no more. He swans off without so much as a whoosh. Gran smacked his arm down on the table and pinned it there with a short knife through his sleeve, and the fool reaches for it with his free hand. Whoosh! That's pinned too with her spare knife, both arms crossed over the table and his skin not even nicked. You desert hag! He manages to shout before Gran catches a fistful of his greasy hair and breaks his nose against the table. Ha ha! I'm up and dancing. This is the best thing since the circus. And then my uncle gives me his look that means silence. Gran's pressed her old elbow sharp and deep into the big man's throat, and he's gone still to his fingertips because he can feel what one more push from her would mean. My granddaughter, she tells him, is a poor student of non-lethal combat, but have a caution. In the matter of knives, she has surpassed her instructor. Gran's formal voice could freeze a man's balls so far up inside he'd never find them again, and have you guessed it, that instructor was her. We send him off with a warning and a clean kerchief from the prince. I'm still dizzy with joy. I'm going to write this, I shout. I will write down exactly what just... My uncle's arm goes around my grandmother. She waves a hand and kind of snarls, but when she coughs, she sprays her plate and the salt cellar and this notebook with blood. I suppose I'm angry. One night on my first deployment, my sergeant warned me. He said, you know, the problem is not that we're trapped here, and not even that the money's gone and there's talk of moving into the stalls with our camels. What do I care? It's been one crowded sty or another since I was 10. No, that's not why I'm angry. It's because the big fool had a point. Not that I ever 1 minute wanted to fuck you, Condry, but you left us here, snuck off with your brother, 2 thieves in the night. You who I was ordered to die protecting, and do I truly have to say I took that order to heart? You ran, and it hurts like a battle wound, like a brick to the skull. The camel drivers still aren't ready to believe it. They walk up and stare at us like it's a language problem or we're playing a trick. Brothers gone? Yes, brothers gone. Condry and Mektu scurried off like 2 brother rats. No doubt you'll say it was for our sake, our protection, because a demon was coming for you and you ran to save the rest of us, to draw her off. Rubbish again. I'm the one who does the protecting. That's all I'm good for. That's why I'm around. And why sneak? Why not say something, you bastard? Tell me that. All those looks, all those talks in the desert, the time we fought the vultures, the time we were drugged and woke up tangled like we fucked all night, the times we survived the salt blindness, the time you were dying and I fed dates into your mouth. You think I'm just some hurt bitch who fights and cusses, but that's not true. I'm a listener. I heard every word you ever spoke. Your eyes said we could be brother and sister. Your voice said, I'm different, girl. Your way of never once trying to touch me said, Talupeke, why don't you trust in my friendship? And then you're gone with no message, without even a wave. I won't curse you in writing, won't insult you like you've done me, but I will find you and you'll explain yourself or be sorry. Listen carefully, boy. I do not like to lose. Thank you very much.
That was really great. It's such a great insight into that amazing character and your new book that's hopefully coming soon.
Soon. Almost done. Almost done.
All right, so let me dive straight into the questions. Your books feature plenty of great female characters. We just saw Talupeke, who's amazing, and there are others like Tasha, Eshet, Arkina, Dri. Even in worlds that are dominated by male protagonists, they are very complex, compelling, and powerful, and they are also flawed. So basically human. What or who are your inspirations for your female characters?
I don't know if should I be able to see you right now, because I can only see a big me. I don't know if that matters. That's fine. It doesn't matter. I just didn't know if it was a technical problem. Inspirations of my female characters. Oh, so many women in my real life and in my reading life, but mostly my real life, I guess. I mean, I could start with things that are predictable but true, like my mother, my grandmothers, both of them. My mother-in-law, who's no longer with us, sadly, but who was a really incredible woman from India, who was, married when she was 13 and in a very, very male-dominated situation, and yet fought for her daughter's education, including, my partner, my spouse, against the wishes of almost everyone around her, and understood the extraordinary importance of education, although she was denied it herself. So many people, field biologists I got to know in my sort of other life, and, I've been doing more writing than anything else for most of my adult life, but I also studied international development and poverty alleviation, food security, environmental justice, and did research in Argentina, in Colombia, lived in Colombia, and got to know just really astonishing activists there, and people fighting for their lives and their rights in conditions impossibly harder than I've had to face. So yeah, I've been lucky to be surrounded by strong women all my life, and men. Yeah. And honestly, I think there are a lot of characteristics of men in my female characters and of women in my male characters. That happens too.
Yeah. So, fantasy is a genre where women are frequently sidelined or idealized, but you seem to have created female characters who feel grounded and unpredictable. So, Tasha comes to mind as someone who could have just been like the treaty bride and not much else, but she turns out to be one of the drivers of the story. And Talupeke is unpredictable in so many ways. How consciously do you navigate traditional gender tropes when writing women in terms of agency, leadership, and emotional labor within the patriarchal system?
Consciously is a very good qualifier that you put into your question, because that's really the trick for me. When I do believe that for a lot of writers, that the fictional dream that people talk about a reader going under is something the writer's under too. And so when it's going well, consciousness is very different from whatever's going on when you're planning, when you're plotting, when you're outlining. So when I'm actually composing and words that will belong in the book, some of them, are getting written out, there is no moment when I stop and think, I want to subvert the dominant image of women or anything else, you know. But in the gestation phase, you know, when you're not in front of your keyboard or in front of your pen and paper, but you're dreaming, that's when I think those decisions are getting made. Whether you're, I mean, I don't think I have ever made a character decision of any kind where I said to myself, this person needs to be this way, so I will write them this way. I mean, character always comes first with me, and that's, you know, it sounds like a big kind of a brag. I think it's sort of a liability too, because the characters are so front and center in my mind that they don't want to share power. You know, so it would be a lot easier actually to plot and to plan. I mean, I'll give you an example. In this trilogy, it's a lot about masculinity, actually. It's about masculinity, you know, gone terribly wrong, masculinity weaponized by military regimes and all kinds of things, and masculinity in less terrible manifestations too. But as such, you know, the most prominent characters when the trilogy begins are two brothers who have been drafted into a war they want nothing to do with. And I sort of had this intention. I was going to write them. Of course, they were going to have conflicts within, you know, among themselves and so on. But it was going to be a very, very, very serious war story and something of an indictment of how war is treated in fantasy. I was going to try to do it better than I'd ever seen before. And then Mektu walked onto the stage, and he was a cuckoo. He was just nuts and a loose cannon, and every third thing he was running a risk of being executed because it was so hazardous to say when you're living under a military totalitarian state like they were. And so suddenly everything changed, and that was because the character was only alive to me in this one way. And so that's to answer your question, it's the same way with women. I mean, I think that if I've started to write in the direction of cliche, something in me, I hope, will always kick in and say, that isn't the truth about this character.
Yeah.
So that's sort of, you know, that's the way it happens, I guess.
Got it. So basically you write female characters like you're people, which...
Yeah, like they're people, right. They are people. Yeah. So.
Unfortunately, some authors still don't do that. Your female characters do make mistakes and bad decisions, and you have some really great complex female villains like the Prophet, Lady Siraris, sorry if I'm saying her name wrong. Do you ever feel pressured by gender and cultural stereotypes to make your female characters likable or relatable? Have you ever got any flack for making a character not likable enough? A female character?
No, I've gotten a little flack for making male characters not likable enough, but not female. No, no, never. No, and actually, I kind of wondered if I would. And it may be that I'm not hearing from, you know, if I write a woman badly, I don't necessarily assume I will hear about it. You know, I hope I would hear about it, because I'd like to, you know, I would like to hear all honest critiques and responses to my work, positive, negative, anything. It's always helpful. But no, I haven't. And I think that the nearest that has happened is that I think sometimes in rare cases, it hasn't gotten through that I am writing a critique of masculinity and not a celebration of it. I thought I was, if anything, being too blatant about that. You know, that if I was going to make an error, it was going to be in the error on the side of making it really clear that I knew just how problematic this masculine army setting that I start with is. But occasionally people didn't realize, you know, perhaps because although they're doing horrific things, they are still human too. You know, and which is one of the more awful things to have to think about when you encounter people doing terrible things. You know, that they are not another species; they are our species.
Yeah.
So.
People. Okay, so most of your books definitely pass the Bechdel test with the inclusion of complex relationships between women.
I hope so. Yeah. Really
I think so. Why do you think, though, that many SFF authors still have trouble writing stories that pass the Bechdel test, despite the fact that there are many more things that women talk about other than men?
Well, not taking up the gauntlet of trying, not taking genuine interest enough in people, and it often that has a gender component for sure. But I think sometimes in genre, the ideas and the concepts, and only certain concepts, not all concepts, are what really get people excited. And there is a readership for that kind of work, obviously. And these days, I less than ever before do I judge anyone for what they love to read. Thank God they're reading stories at all. But I do think it's possible to get a whole lot out of a reading experience and not be reaching for anything that I personally can reach for. So I think that one part of the answer I'm trying to give you is when people aren't deeply fascinated and obsessed with the individual workings of human minds, that's going to lead you to lots of errors, including not passing the Bechdel test. And then if on top of that, you're only able to really imaginatively connect with men for some reason as a writer, well, you're going to blow that one by a mile. I don't know that it's more complicated than that, unfortunately. And and when I say these sort of things, I don't say it with pride, or I hope. I think that is a phenomenon that happens, and I think the things I stumble through myself and in self-examination today are many and legion, and so I don't feel enlightened in the least. But maybe the errors I make are of a different sort. That's how I feel.
Do you have any suggestions for male writers who want to write female conversations and relationships realistically?
Well, first of all, do they feel that they can write other conversations realistically? Because if they can write two men talking together in a really realistic and convincing and dynamic way that works on the page, but they can't do that with women, then that points to something very different. If they have trouble writing dialogue at all, that's a different diagnosis. But as a teacher of writing, I have lots of thoughts about what helps with dialogue. But so if let's say that it's somebody who generally writes dialogue pretty well but doesn't write women very well, how deeply imagined are your women characters, and how fully do you sit with them and experience them, or do you try to push them through their paces and use them to certain plot ends? Because if you're sitting with them and you're as fascinated with them and as excited to spend time with them as you are male characters, or monsters without gender, or whatever else you might be writing, AIs, whatever you might be writing, if you're just as deeply fascinated with women, then it's a matter of practice, I would say.
Yeah, I mean, it's good.
Great questions. I mean, I appreciate you asking them. Some of these I've never been asked before.
Oh, good.
That one I haven't been.
Okay. Well, because we find that, we've interviewed a lot of authors, and we find that, and we're all readers here, so we find that, it's a bit strange that some people just don't write female characters as good as they write the men. And I think you're right. It's observation, and maybe just believing that women are people, and they have complexities as well.
Yeah.
So anyway, let's talk about men now.
Okay.
So you were saying just now that your book was about masculinity gone wrong, and your books all of your books actually do feature some misogynistic characters, and many stories like the Master Assassins is set in quite violent societies or worlds. But there are male characters who are respectful of women and of their thoughts and their decisions. Do you think reframing how stories describe men away from the hostile and toxic stereotypes that we we see a lot in fantasy and even sci-fi, towards complexity and even vulnerability, can be one of the ways that writers can break away from tropes that promote toxic masculinity and the dehumanization of women.
Well, absolutely, yes. The only caveat I would add there is that anything can be a trope if it's done in a way that denies the true lived complexity that attends any human behavior. So you can write something, you can write the same fundamental events and make it a sad cliche, or the same basic events imbued with much more attention to character and to the complexities that are always there and to the nuances, and you're not writing cliche. So it's I wouldn't ever go so far as to say stop writing stories in which X happens. I would say stop writing stories in which you iron out and deny the presence of complexity when anything happens. And it's another subject of, are people simply tired of encountering it, whether it's well done or poorly done? And that's also a legitimate consideration. There are things that I personally just have read enough of in my life, and I don't want to read anymore. I mean, it's hard to sell me on a eco-catastrophe novel because I think about eco-catastrophe all day long anyway, and I don't necessarily want to go there in my imagination. But that's just me. It's not because they aren't fantastic. I didn't think until about 2 weeks ago that I ever wanted to read an AI novel, particularly. It wasn't my cup of tea. And then one came along, and it was so very good that I couldn't put it down. So, for me, it's much more about, are you trying to take shortcuts that deny the true lived experience? That's when cliches happen, I think.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Okay, let's dive a little deeper into that. So your young male characters like Puzzle and Kanji, they are very deeply introspective. Their journeys are marked by vulnerability and transformation. How do you approach masculinity in your young male protagonists, especially in contrast to the traditional heroic models?
It's just that I don't approach masculinity. I just have characters that come to life, and maybe it's because of my interests in these questions that they come to life the way they do. But it sounds like I'm being a little evasive. It's just the honest truth. I mean, it's not a conscious intention, and it's never a plan. I don't think I want to write a character who's got his shit worked out. No. In fact, I think people who've worked out all their questions are not exactly exciting on the page. That's one of the reasons I write flawed characters all the time, men and women. They're more interesting to write about. Somebody with perfect politics, who's thought through everything and behaves in a way that we all admire. It's really nice to know those people in real life, and it's not actually that much fun to read about a book that's full of them.
Yeah, you're right.
And they're very hard to bring to life in a way that really thrills on the page. It's amazing when you can. I think Alyosha and the Brothers Karamazov is my standard example of someone who basically never does anything that we think, oh, that was stupid, or that was wrong, or that was bad, and yet he's still fascinating somehow to a lot of readers. But it's very hard to do. So how do I think about masculinity? I mean, I don't mean to dodge it. I must be thinking about it a lot because of the settings I've chosen, particularly for this novel.
Yes.
I know that consciously I wanted to be in dialogue with the epic fantasy tradition that uses violence a lot of times as sort of the engine for fun. I hate to put it so bluntly, but it's war is adventure. Even if you show the bloody side of it, there's a certain sense that the psychic consequences of being exposed to violence tend to get down, soft pedaled a little bit and softened. And I started out with this intention to say, all of that is BS, and I'm going to really be as honest as I can about what it does to people to live in war, and also the conduct of war, in which for as much as there is the reality of women in combat all over the world, there's also the reality of sexual violence as a tool of war. And I was damned if I was going to sanitize any war story that I set down for 10 years to write. I wasn't going to deny the experiences of anyone or turn it into something more comfortable. Which is not to say, actual sexual violence is not present, I think, anywhere on the page in these 3 books so far, but people know it's going on, and so, and that is unfortunately an expression of masculinity gone toxic in the worst possible way.
Do you think that eventually the violent alpha male type character would phase out of SFF as cultures worldwide start peeking out toxic masculinity, or do you think it's one of those stereotypes that's going to stick around for much longer than expected?
That's a great question. I don't know. I don't know where things are going. I was saying before we started, the last 6 or 8 years have made me doubt my ability to predict much of anything. But I don't know. I do think that there will be change, and in that register as well as many others, and where it will go, I just don't feel I have confidence in predicting it, but I could see and celebrate a world where that happens. And I think that if it sticks around in the sort of, the alpha male that was the Buck Rogers of yore, that's going to become more and more niche and more sort of quaint and done with a sort of irony and like, look, we can still do this, rather than this driving central aspect of the fiction people read. I mean, even in my lifetime, I'm in my 50s, and I've seen the emergence of a vastly broader spectrum of heroes than one encountered, and not just in books, but certainly in film, and that's a good thing. Where it will go, I don't know, because it seems like we all want to believe that we're on a trajectory that's going to go where we want and hope that we will go, and history shows how often enlightenment slips away. So that could happen too. We've got to work for it continually. Constant vigilance.
All right, so stories are one of the most powerful ways of bringing about social change. So let's talk about writing stories and genre. In fantasy, sometimes the line between consent and coercion isn't always clear, whether it's epic fantasy, urban fantasy, paranormal romance is one that comes to mind. Certainly in subgenres such as grimdark, violence against women is still often used as a catalyst for a male character's development, or as a shorthand for showing how brutal the world is, like you mentioned just now. Do you think this is an issue that writers in the genre have started tackling successfully in recent years?
I think so, yes. But I think so because I hear writers far more well-read in those subgenres than I am saying so. I can't attest to it from my own reading, partly because writing a book that's now on, manuscript page 1024 or something like that has really cut into my reading life of late. But yes, I think so. And I think that's a great thing. There has been a terrific ongoing conversation, and it's, constantly confronting people who haven't paid much attention to the conversation and are still writing those terrible tropes, and oh, the plot's slowing down, let's kill another woman, that kind of thing. It goes on a lot still, but there is a terrific and helpful pushback, and I think a lot of writers are getting the message. And again, it's one of those things you gotta keep talking about it, because it won't happen automatically.
Yeah. You mentioned just now in the Fire Sacraments series, the world is at war and violence against women is rampant, even normalized, you would say, but it's never seen on the page, is kind of implied. how do you approach writing violence against women as an essential part of the plot and avoiding gratuitous violence on the page?
Well, I guess it's a choice scene by scene and chapter by chapter about what belongs on the page. And one of the surprises, because this is the most direct war story I've written, and so that's been one education. The number of times that we're out on the battlefield has been more limited than I thought, and not all armies at all times in all conflicts commit crimes of a sexual nature in the same way. And in this continent, the warring parties are many, and the degree of organization in the army differs from group to group. So it isn't just a simple situation of like everybody out there fighting is doing roughly the same amount of stuff to women who are captured or women in combat or anything like that. It varies tremendously, and it has happened that I have spent more time inside the head of people who are not in situations where that's likely to happen. So again, it's known that it happens. It's and smaller degradations are heaped out on women as a matter of course. I mean, the presence of army brothels is right there in the first book and recurs. And one of the things that you encounter in Master Assassins is the sort of hazing process from the men's point of view, where little by little, if they are disinclined to go and buy sex in a brothel on the edge of the army camp, they are beaten down until many of them simply fold and go do that, or claim that they do, and go in and pay their money and sit in a corner, in the brothel. And again, this is not me as I talk. I'm not trying to describe like broad trends and say this is what really happens in the world. I'm saying this is what really happened to my small cast of characters. And so I haven't put I've never written a rape scene, not because I never would, but because it's never been it's never been germane to the story I was telling, and I don't know if it ever will be. I mean, I don't know that I've encountered many times in my reading life where I read such a scene and thought that had to be on the page. I've often wondered why, and because everything, even a third-person story, is a reconstruction of memory. It's or takes the form of memory of some kind, unless it's written in the present tense, But and what narrative process has happened that has said the important thing now is to go into a scene where a woman is violated? I'm not sure if I'm articulating this in a way that you can quite understand, but it's like I often think memory of trauma is a complex thing, and it doesn't play out like a video recording. And a lot of times when you see that graphic stuff on the page, it's gone cinematic in an ugly way. And I think that often sort of violates the whole process of memory that gives fiction its texture and its shape. So maybe that's why it hasn't appeared on the page for me.
Yeah.
Because I'm a language guy.
Yeah. Yeah, I understand. Yeah. Okay, so let's talk about geek culture now. Geek culture in general, including fantasy, science fiction, it's had its share of critics saying that it's still too male-dominated, despite there are a rising number of prominent, well-respected, and well-known female authors. Plus, there's still plenty of hostile, misogynist, and sexist behavior by male geeks towards female geeks. What do you think should be done to make geek culture as a whole, whether it's comics or gaming, books or cons, more welcoming for women and girls?
Well, men should never, ever hesitate to say, cut that shit out to other men, for starters. And I really applaud the men who do, and try to do it a lot myself. So I think it is men's responsibility to not tolerate that in private, as in when only men are talking to men, not or anywhere else. That's one thing I think, and to not wait for women to bring it up. That's what I think, and to not just sort of gloss over it, when it's there mixed in with a lot of other stuff. So I think it's it's a problem that's manifested because of male behavior and needs to be addressed by men. I think women are doing everything to open those doors that one could ask of them. So.
Okay. All right. Believe it or not, we've been talking for 45 minutes.
Wow. Really?
So I've come to my last set of questions.
Okay.
So you have been very incredibly supportive of Read for Pixels and our anti-violence against women work as a whole. I'm going to ask you a little bit of a Captain Obvious question here, but we ask all our authors this. Why do you support the cause to end violence against women?
Because something worldwide that I would call male terrorism is something I've hated my entire life, and I would like to see it reduce in the world, and it's I love people, and women are one kind of person that I love, and I don't want to see them hurt, and I don't want to be grouped with a category of another kind of person that does that hurting, and I'm sick of it, and it's wrong, and I support it because I'm so inspired by the women who, like all of you, who are creatively and continuously acting against it, and I want to do what I can to be supportive of that and part of that, and again, even outside a campaign like yours, to just be raising my voice and using my voice in my storytelling and my whatever abilities to communicate I can to fight against that. So I'm just glad you asked me to be part of this.
We're very glad to have you. One more last question. Mm-hmm. What do you think authors can do to help with the cultural change needed to eradicate violence against women and girls?
Gosh, that's such a great question, and it's one I've been really, really wrestling with, because I've been watching author activism for a while, and I wish there was more of it. I don't think my answer to that has anything to do about what writers put in their stories. I mean, beyond what we talked about, which is significant, about thinking, what tropes are you reproducing? What are you getting wrong? Because the better you write your story, what's good fiction is another question. But in one of the most maligned words that we can use, literary. Literary means a lot of things to different people, but for me, literary means doing your very, very, very best and hardest work to tell the truth about the human heart in conflict with itself. That famous phrase from Faulkner. And when you do that, you are recognizing women and every other kind of person as a person, and you are recognizing the harm that's done through the lens of gender and through the agency of gender, and you are telling stories that reveal more of the truth of how harmful that is. So that's on the page. Now, off the page, I just wish all of us solidarity and fearlessness. I mean, there's a lot of danger out there in all kinds of forms. There's people that will shred you in the online world in ways that have terribly tangible effects for your real life. So, there's a whole range of different vulnerabilities out there and levels of privilege, but nobody's safe. And it's not for me to say to any one particular person, you have to be doing more. But collectively, I think we have to be doing more, all of us. And we have to try to support one another to find the ways to do that, the opportunities to do that, the courage to do that, and just to never give up. There's nowhere to go but forward. And we need more and more and more energy invested in that effort to move forward.
Thanks, Robert. That brings us to the end of the Q&A session. And I'm going to put myself back on.
Hi.
So thank you so much for that amazing Q&A. Thank you for giving us such great answers and sharing your insights and perspective. Before we wrap up, I just want to tell everybody again, in case you missed it, Robert has donated some exclusive goodies to the stash of swag we have put up on our Rally Up fundraising page. There's the amazing CDs. So the first one is the audiobook edition of the Red Wolf Conspiracy, and with an accompanying signed and personalized note from Robert. And then there is the audiobook edition of Master Assassins, also in CD format, that's sealed as well, with an accompanying signed and personalized note from Robert. And a very special 5th edition hardcover, signed and personalized Master Assassins. Yeah, that's it. So these 3 things are available for US donors only. Now, the 4th thing is available for donors worldwide, and that is for the budding fantasy author among you. Robert has graciously donated an opportunity for one donor to get a professional feedback on their writing. He will be very happy to provide a written critique on 20 pages of your work in progress. So besides all this amazing stuff, there are also plenty more author goodies available from authors including Katrina Ward, Cerise Renee Murphy, Chloe Gong, Kirsten White, Primi Muhammad. We even have books from Penguin Random House, and new goodies will be released every week throughout September. We've raised so far $3,335 towards our $5,000 goal, so please do give generously before the fundraiser ends in October. All funds go towards our work to help end violence against women. I'm going to share some slides right now. Here you go. So that's the link for our Rally Up page. And the links are also in our chat box, so just go over there and click them. And if you want to learn more about Read for Pixels, about all the other authors we're going to have on, please go to our Read for Pixels page, and that link is also in the chat box right now. And if you are interested in feminist horror poetry, you might want to get your hands on a copy of our award-winning Under the Eye poetry collection that is published in partnership with Black Spot Books. You can either get the paperback or the ebook edition from all major booksellers worldwide, or you can even find it on Black Spot Books' website. The collection comprises poems by 112 acclaimed female and non-binary poets, opening with Know to Be True by Bram Stoker Award winner Stephanie M. Buttigieg, and The Writing Assignment by HWA Lifetime Achievement Award winner and SFPA Grandmaster Marge Simon. And it closes on a powerful note with A Map of the Backyard by Bram Stoker Award nominee Jessica Mahue. Net proceeds for Under Her Eye go towards the Pixel Project's anti-violence against women work. And finally, if you want to find out more about violence against women, what you can do about it, visit our website, www.thepixelproject.net. We have a lot of information and resources and links. And for helplines and resources in your country, go to nomoredirectory.org. They have a searchable database for almost every country in the world. Yeah, and that's it. Okay, so that's it from us.
You guys rock. Thank you so much for the work you do. And thank you for letting me come and read with you.
Thank you so much, Robert. And we're so happy to have you here with us. And we had a great time. So we're going to say goodbye to everybody. And good night and good day wherever you are.
Bye. Thanks for listening. Bye-bye.